everybody, and happy Friday. Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health, your friendly neighborhood naturopath, talking to you today and every weekday, Monday through Friday, from 3 to 5 p.m. Central Time, right here on the Genesis Communication Network, about all things holistic. My colleagues and I bring to the table decades, centuries of experience with science-based, clinically verified, holistically oriented methods of health recovery. And this isn't, some fly-by-night quack medicine sold on the side of a street type of a deal. This is licensed medical primary care, science-based, clinically verified. The problem that we have in this country is that nobody knows that my profession exists because the medical theater here has been dominated by the MDs for the last 100 years. That's why we have radio programs like this. Said right there in the Old Testament, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Well, this is it. You don't know what you don't know. And when it comes to your health, the stuff that you don't know about medical nutrition will heal you or kill you. And so that's what we do. We pull back the curtain and expose the egregious failures and the nonsense point of views of our not-so-good friends, the MDs. Quite frankly, they're our enemies. Not because we like to have enemies, but because they drew first blood. They drew first blood. They were the people that said, no, we're the only people that can practice medicine. The naturopaths, the chiropractors, the osteopaths, the homeopaths, the herbalists, everybody else has to go pound sand. It was they that took that punch. It was they that swung that punch, not us. They're our enemies because they chose to be our enemies, and this is what we're up against here in the United States. So this is why we do this radio program, to draw a line in the sand, take back a little bit of the territory, and dispense and disperse information about things that you can do right now to help yourself recover your health. Now, we're introducing a new segment every Friday, well, as many Fridays as we can. In the first segment, it's called Kicking It with the Commander. It is my privilege to introduce to everybody my colleague and my friend, Mark Denning. Mark Denning, thank you so much for being here with me. How's it going, buddy?
Oh, it's good for you to hear me.
Hey, tell the listening audience a little bit about your history and, your credentials and what you do for a living.
Well, I'm a little bit younger than you, but not much. I've been in the medical field for about let's do the math, 1978. I got the nickname Doc D in high school and health class, which kind of defined things from there on out. Went in the military after high school, spent 15 years with the active reserve component, combat medic, worked in the OR, was a trauma nurse in the military, became a nurse outside, been there about 26 years. Hooked up with you and Doc Wallach, was it about almost 4 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, 4 years now, yeah.
And you guys helped me know what I didn't know, and defeat quite a few health issues that I had. When I cared for others, I stopped, caring for myself. And this led to multiple blood clots, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, sleep apnea.
And you were on more Coumadin than is humanly possible. Is that right?
Well, for most humans. And it was after I lost a bunch of weight, I figured things would go down. But, like I tell you, if the rat bit me, it would die. Because that's what's in decon rat poison.
Yeah.
I was like, hello, come on, come and get me. Orkin wanted to hire me just for me, but that's okay.
Now, right now, you're the guy that's in back of the ambulance that's keeping people alive while they're being transported to the hospital, right?
That can be real scary. Yeah, I'm like a flight nurse on the ground. I just choose not to get in the air again. And, it's just... somebody, all right, Wellness Warriors on Facebook, somebody called me a phenomenon. because I bring, the allopathic medicine now into natural medicine, and I help, like you, I help people transition a different way. My credibility's been mostly allopathic, but then they hear successes and knowledge that I help them with, and it's like sometimes the light bulb goes on, sometimes it flickers a little, but then it gets stronger as they see people and have a good result. And
so what type of things, in your day-to-day life, as you're going about your business, as an RN in back of the ambulance, transporting people to the hospital, what types of things are you seeing people suffering from?
There's just a tremendous amount of stroke and amazing amounts of heart failure. I mean, these people have pumps like Dick Cheney does. I take one of those, a couple of those every week. The strokes can be a couple a day. Heart attacks, of course, any traumas. Women with preeclampsia, they're getting ready to have seizures, and we got them on medicine to help diminish their contractions. And, there's me in the back of the ambulance go, if she only took the Mighty 90 and maybe a little extra calcium and some good protein and some enzymes, that preeclampsia wouldn't be there.
And so, in the population that you serve in Greater Chicago, does it matter if you're rich or poor or middle class as far as needing to be transported to the hospital?
No, we don't define anybody on their economic status. In fact, I went from Hinsdale, Illinois to Rockford, Illinois, up to Madison, Wisconsin the other day. I went 80 miles to get the patient, and then another 70 miles with the patient.
So it doesn't matter from the patient's point of view whether they're rich or whether they're poor or whether they're somewhere in the middle. Everybody's sick all of the time, and it's got nothing to do with their economic status, right?
Not at all. Not at all. It's what they know. It's just, man, you can tell how many deep breaths I take during a 13-hour watch on the rig, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, you could do that. And sometimes, I'll pop a little quib in there. I'm not supposed to, but I said, sometimes, I had this high blood pressure, I did the gluten-free thing, and 3 days later, boom, I'm a new man.
Yeah.
Just kind of like that. And then if they want to ask questions, my partners all know, and they don't give me a hard time about it. And we share a little bit. It gives us the time to have a good chat, try to connect with them, check out what their economics are. It was really weird. I was doing some reading, and I learned about the people that were refined back in the day had refined illnesses, and people that were poor didn't have these illnesses because they ate wholesome food.
Now, when you say wholesome food, what do you mean? Fruits, vegetables, simple things. None of these processed or excessive sugars, things like that. Things that we were. Yeah, eggs and butter and salt, right? Eggs and butter and salt and meat and vegetables and fruit. Eggs and butter and salt and meat and vegetables and fruit. That's what people need.
Yeah.
They don't need Twinkies. They don't need Wonder Bread. They don't need processed meats with nitrates. They certainly don't need margarine. They certainly don't need fat-free milk. But this is the culture that we find ourselves in, right? This is the culture that we find ourselves in. Everybody has the wrong information all of the time. Nobody questions it. Everybody eats the wrong stuff all of the time, and because everybody eats the wrong stuff all of the time, and because nobody supplements with the raw materials that the body needs to stay healthy, everybody's sick all of the time. But because everybody is sick all of the time, everybody thinks that's just life. And you and I and Dr. Wallach and every other longevity member stands in direct contradistinction to that, because we are different. We are taking a stand. Ladies and gentlemen, you do not have to be sick and you do not have to suffer. Aging is mandatory, but suffering is optional. And quite frankly, Commander, I don't know how you do what you do every day, because you are surrounded, literally, by people who are on their way out, sick and suffering from a lifetime of wrong decisions provoked by their relationship with the medical community.
Yeah, I'm torn. You know, you, me, and Dr. Wallach, we bring over probably almost 100 years of experience. Crazy. And it just blows me away what I've learned from you, what I've learned from him, what I've read on my own, things people have shared. Man, you know, you had your thing, you know, I hope not everybody, you know, when you had your flu webinar, I apologize I didn't get there, but, you know, I was servicing the people who made poor choices. But in healthcare, but they didn't know. So I hope everybody caught your webinar, but not the flu. You know what I'm saying?
So, look, we have just a minute and a half left here in this segment, then I'll keep you on for the next segment. When we're coming back, I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about essential fatty acids, because this seems to be the topic of the day. I just guest hosted for Dr. Wallach, and every other call was about the stroke, right? Everybody's getting strokes.
Oh,
everybody's
yeah.
having bad blood. So, in the next segment, let's kick it off with a conversation about essential fatty acids. Does that sound good to you?
Oh, yeah. Fat Friday.
All right, so stay tuned. So give me your take on essential fatty acids, Commander. How important are they, and what's your favorite?
What's my favorite? Well, of course, my favorite is Dr. Wallach's formula. One of the issues I had was a lot of blood clots. So we needed to thin up the blood a little bit in a certain way, and you said, you got to take this many. And so I've been taking that many, and there's no more blood clots, of course. I take Longevity Products, EFA Plus, 3 a day, and 6 regular EFAs. I mean, they play such a big role in everything in our body. You know, your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates are all dependent on a good source of fatty acids for good metabolism, because if we don't do it, you know, we don't have good fats. And if we don't have good fats, we don't have good cells. If we don't have good cells, we get damaged. And, you know, things cascade from there in just a great way. And, you know, as our body burns up everything all the reserves that we had, you know, like you said, you know, we got to fill up that container, man, because once it's full, it's amazing. But for everybody, you know, it's just like it takes a different amount of time. I learned recently that a fun fact that, you know, your body can, as the cells replicate, you know, it takes maybe about 6 to 8 months. If you give your body really good things, clean up your diet, your body can do wondrous things, you know.
Now, how long were you yourself suffering with blood clots, so much so that you needed massive amounts of Coumadin? I mean, how long had that been a problem for you?
Well, here's stupid me. Allopathic medicine, sorry. For some. Trauma, okay, infectious disease, okay. But, first time I had blood clots was 9 of them in my lungs, 2 in my legs, and I was on Coumadin, and I read the research, and I said, oh, it's only gonna, 3% chance of coming back. I'm like, cool, I'm not taking this stuff. So within a couple of years, of course, you know, my MD didn't tell me about how to correct my nutrition, what to add, what to look for, you know, and it was like, bam, big blood. I thought first I had a leg infection from just cellulitis, which is just skin infection. And while I was admitted, of course, because of my history, AFib Institute, I had a big clot in my pulmonary artery. And,
ouch.
And one in the leg. So, you know, here comes 6 other medicines. Oh, and you're diabetic, so we got to protect the kidneys.
All right, so from start to finish, how many years were you suffering with blood clots?
Probably about 4.
4 years. And how long did it take all of that nonsense to resolve with essential fatty acid supplementation?
Well, we gained confidence in about 5 to 6 months, and we said no more Coumadin. So.
All right, so 4 years of blood clots getting worse and worse and worse, needed more and more and more Coumadin. Stopped the Coumadin, the blood clots came back, 4 years, and in 6 months, it's completely gone. And when you did that, Mark, how much did you weigh?
Well, when I had the episodes, I was about 325.
And what do you weigh now?
235.
Gotta love it. So you've lost 100 pounds, baby. Completely eliminated the blood clots, completely eliminated the blood sugar issue that you had, no more high blood pressure. All of this because of science-based, clinically verified medical nutrition. I mean, for goodness sake, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in the listening audience, you're listening to this testimonial, you heard Abi's testimonial for the miracle in Miami from yesterday. If you're not compelled to take action on your own behalf, as God is my witness, you're missing the boat. Give us a call, 855-347-3696. We'll tell you about the health opportunity, about the business opportunity. You, too, can be just like the commander. You, too, can be just like Abby. You can take your health back. Yeah. Healing is easy. Surgery is complicated. Healing is easy. You need the 90 essential nutrients. Clean your diet up. Give your body a break. You are going to be amazed at what your body can do. Thank you so much, Mr. Denning, for spending a half an hour with us. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you do. Now go out there and enroll somebody, buddy. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Australia on the line when we're coming back, so stick around. Hey, welcome back. Dr. Peter Glidden. This is Influenza Week. And coming up shortly, I'm going to finish out my little diatribe, my weekly diatribe, and we're going to talk about the side effects of influenza vaccines and what's up with that. But right now, we're going straight to Australia. Why? Because we can. Why can we? Because we are international. We're talking to PJ all the way from Australia. Don't you just love the internet, PJ? Thanks for calling. How's it going down under? Come on in, PJ. Hello, PJ. Can you hear me? All right. I think we're having a little trouble connecting up with Australia. So I'm just going to start talking about the side effects of influenza, and then when we get PJ back, we'll cut over to Australia because she has a very interesting question that I'd like everybody to hear. Now, we're always told about the flu vaccine that the side effects are minimal. Well, au contraire, I beg to differ. In the swine flu vaccine in the 80s, there was a neurological condition called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which resulted in paralysis in its extreme form. You became paralyzed from it. And hundreds of people became afflicted with Guillain-Barré syndrome as a direct result of the vaccine. And millions, if not billions of dollars have been paid out for damages. And it's hard to get an actual number because, these things are hard to track and people don't want other people to know that they were involved with a lawsuit and that now they're multimillionaires. And so there's not a lot of information that's available to the public. However, Boston University did a study about this. Some guy was doing a PhD at Boston University, and he looked at this whole phenomenon. He was getting his law degree. He looked at this whole phenomenon, and as it turns out, the conservative estimates are that it cost as much for the government in compensation payouts to victims of the flu vaccine as it did to buy and distribute the flu vaccine. So from a financial point of view, it was break even. And quite frankly, I think they lost money on it because I think there have been more claims than not. But what is this all about? Guillain-Barré syndrome. Well, how did that happen? What was the mechanism that caused the vaccine to generate paralysis? Well, short answer, nobody knows. Because viruses, in and of themselves, are very peculiar microorganisms. And the scientific communities refers to viruses as organisms on the edge of life. Because nobody knows what the heck is going on with the virus. Is it a plant? It's not a plant. Is it a mineral? It's not a mineral. Is it an animal? Maybe yes, maybe no. There are characteristics of virus which make it seem like it's an alive, living entity because it can reproduce, but it can only reproduce inside a host cell. It can only reproduce once it infects a living cell. A virus can exist on the tabletop for millions of years, right there on the tabletop. And it doesn't become active until it gets in the body. Well, what's up with that? Is it living? Is it dead? It doesn't have a central nervous system. It doesn't have the complex cell structure that, living organisms do. All that it is genetic material, DNA or RNA, covered by a protein coat that's then covered by a lipid membrane, a fatty membrane. There's 3 parts to a virus: fatty membrane, a protein coat, and DNA or RNA. What's up with that? Well, nobody knows what's up with that. And fun facts to know and tell, viruses are the most abundant organism on the planet. There are more viruses than any other type of organism. More viruses than bacteria, more viruses than insects, more viruses than people, more viruses than animals, fish, or birds. There are more viruses than anything else on the planet. And I bet you didn't know this, viruses are necessary for evolution. Necessary for evolution, because they help to transport genetic material from individual to individual inside of species, across species lines. It's unbelievable what viruses do. Quite frankly, without viruses, who knows? We might all still be cavemen, although we can debate that ad nauseum. In any event, the fundamental take-home message here that I'm going to talk more about in the next segment is that when it comes to just nuts and bolts science, the scientific community is clueless as to what, in fact, a virus is. And even though they're clueless as to what, in fact, a virus is, they have no problem manipulating a virus with a vaccine and then injecting it into the human body in order to try to get some type of a result. And this is nonsense. This is a fool's errand. When you go like this, when you pursue this type of fuzzy science, you're going to screw something up. And that's what happens. So scientists who have very little understanding about what a virus is, how it works, you can't even see a virus with a microscope. You can only see a virus with a scanning electron microscope. So, they don't know what the heck it is, and yet they'll snip pieces of the proteins off, or they'll reproduce the virus, and then they'll put it in a chemical bath to get rid of some of the cellular components, and then they'll inject it into people, and it's just a big crapshoot. And in the pandemic of 1918, after World War I, during and after World War I, the great Spanish flu epidemic, 500 million people infected worldwide, 50 million people killed by the flu, the swine flu epidemic of 1918. The scientific community, there are people inside the scientific community who are of the opinion that it was the vaccination of soldiers in Fort Dix who had another type of flu. It was the vaccination of the soldiers in Fort Dix that caused the virulent form of the 1918 influenza virus to generate. And by the way, viruses evolve. Viruses evolve over time. Darwin found that on the Galapagos there were certain types of iguanas that had learned how to swim. And different species of the same bird had developed different beaks because the plant life on that particular island, they could only get the pollen if their beak was an inch longer than their cousins, right? And so we see adaptability and change inside of species lines. And it's viruses in part that are responsible for that. And nobody knows what's going on with these things. And even though nobody knows what's going on with these things, the scientific community has no problem manipulating them and then injecting them en masse into millions of people. The vaccination industry worldwide generates $28 billion of revenue every year. $28 billion. About $2.5 billion of that is the flu vaccine. $2.5 billion worldwide. That's a pretty big industry. And the reason that the flu vaccine is indicated is purely for financial reasons. I have a colleague, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. I tried to get her on this week, but her schedule wouldn't allow, or perhaps we'll be able to carve out time for her next week. You should really visit her website. Just do a Google search for Sherry Tenpenny. Sherry Tenpenny, or drtenpenny.com, I believe, is the website. She is the go-to medical person in the world for tried and true, science-based, clinically verified, no nonsense, no bias information about vaccines, including the flu vaccine. You visit her website, your head's going to explode. Because right there on the front page of her website, it shows all of the cases pending right now about damages delivered to people from negative reactions to the flu. But this is not reported in the public media. It's not reported in mainstream medicine. And the scientists will tell you, oh, the influenza virus is 60% effective. It's not. Nobody has been able to determine from a scientific point of view, an objectified scientific vantage point, exactly how effective it is. They made that number up from a biased study. It's all about smoke and mirrors and misdirection here. And this is what happens when you have an industry that monopolizes a particular field of human endeavor. Right? Monopoly leads to corruption. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. And this is the problem that we have here in the United States. The medical industry that we have access to has been corrupted by a medical monopoly, and we're paying the price for it. And it is a big problem. It looks like we have PJ back from Australia. PJ, are you with us? Hello, PJ. PJ, where'd you go? Well, it looks like we're having some type of technical difficulty here dialing Australia in, folks. I apologize for that. We're going to try to sort this out in the next segment. So my basic rule of thumb here is don't trust medical professionals when they're attempting to manipulate virus particles, because number one, they don't know what the heck they're doing. Number two, virus particles carry DNA and RNA. They carry genetic material. And you don't want to be messing around with that unless you know exactly what you're doing. You're playing with fire when you're trying to manipulate genetic material on, an extremely minute scale. The stuff that's involved with evolution, you're actually trying to manipulate that? And this passes as good science? Yeah, I don't think so. But that's the way that it goes in the United States. So what do we recommend people do instead? Well, it's easy. You have to support and promote your body's ability to fix itself. You have to make your body healthy. And when you make your body healthy, it's going to be very, very difficult for the stress of life to knock your body over and cause a negative effect. Negative effects like the influenza, like an upper respiratory tract infection, like anything. So our basic stance here is make your body healthy with the 90 essential nutrients every day. 90 for life. Take one healthy start pack per 100 pounds of body weight per day. Take one bottle of selenium per 50 pounds of body weight per month. That's one healthy start pack per 100 pounds of body weight per month. One bottle of selenium per 50 pounds of body weight per month, and one bottle of Z-Radical per 100 pounds of body weight per month. If you take those three supplements and clean your diet up, it's going to take a super influenza virus to knock you off balance. And during cold and flu season, what you can do to protect yourself is get the PureWorks foam. Put the PureWorks foam on your hands And when you put the Pure Work foam on your hands, it's going to inoculate you against any type of bacterial infection for up to 5 hours. So get a big bottle, put it by the back door to your house. Get a little bottle, put it in your purse, put it in your pocket, put it in your briefcase, put it in your car. Put the Pure Works foam on your hand every 4 hours. You know, program your smartphone to make an alarm every 4 hours, and every time it goes off, just squirt the Pure Works foam on your hands. You're going to be healthy, you're going to be guarded, you're not going to get the flu. This is where prevention really is worth, an ounce of prevention is worth 100 pounds of cure. You know, it's remarkable to me the amount of I want to choose my words correctly here, the amount of intellectual, juvenile intellectual thought that's brought to bear on stuff having to do with medicine. Even inside of the medical community, you'll read the research articles, and if you read them straight through, most doctors don't, by the way, because when you do, when you put together a research, you know, you spend $3 million to do a research project. Even if you spend $10,000 to do a research project, the actual research is 3 or 4 pages long. It's all this highfalutin scientific mumbo-jumbo that, quite frankly, is hard to follow and hard to read through, just like legalese. It's a hard thing to follow. It's a hard thing to wrap your brain around. You have to read it like 5 or 6 times before it starts to sink in, and that's if you have a high IQ. So at the beginning of a research paper, there's an abstract. It's a short little 1 or 2 paragraph thing that kind of sums up what the research is about. But the abstract doesn't give you the details. And the abstract will say, and I read this abstract at the beginning of the week, when you listen to these radio advertisements about the influenza virus, or when medical doctors like Dr. Oz are, interviewed about it, they will say that, oh, it's 60% effective. And if you read the abstract on the research, it says right there it's 60% effective. So it must be 60% effective, right? Well, when you read through the research, it's not. Because the way that they did the research was biased. Here's what they did. They took 1,100 people who had admitted themselves to hospitals with upper respiratory tract infections. They looked at 1,100 sick people. And of those 1,100 sick people, they tested them all for influenza. And they saw which ones in that population had the influenza virus in their blood, and then they speculated that it was the influenza virus that made them sick. Well, was it the influenza virus that made them sick? Nobody knows. You speculate that that's what made them sick, but does the presence of the influenza virus in somebody's blood automatically mean that they're sick? This is an a priori conclusion that everybody agreed on, although it's never been proved. But furthermore, they then looked at the people who were sick with the flu virus and saw how many of them had been vaccinated. And then they looked at how many people were sick without the flu and how many of them were vaccinated. And then they calculated all of their calculations based upon that. The idea being that in a randomized population study like that during the flu season, the people who didn't have the flu virus in their blood must have been exposed to the flu virus. But there's no way to prove that. So it's a complete farce. The research is a complete farce. And if you want to take it a step further, there's a very interesting phenomenon that happens, and if you were a real doctor, you'd understand this. If I have the measles, and my skin is all broken out with the measles, those little tiny, measles eruptions, and then I get the chicken pox, the measles disappears until the chicken pox runs its course, and then once the chicken pox is gone, the measles come back. Why is this? Because, like I talked about yesterday, 2 similar diseases cannot coexist in the human body at the same time. One misplaces the other. So maybe when the influenza virus is present in your body, it's impossible for you to get sick with anything else, and also vice versa. Maybe there was a rhinovirus in those people's body, and it was the rhinovirus that provided immunity against the flu virus. But nobody knows, by the way, it's the rhinovirus that causes the common cold. So there are all of these assumptions which which the researchers just believe as gospel, even though it's never been proven to be so. And they pass this off as good science, and then a knucklehead MD just reads the abstract. They don't read the whole document through, and then they have the audacity to go on national TV and tell you it's 60% effective when it's nonsense. It's nonsense, ladies and gentlemen. For goodness sake, don't trust your MD when it comes to anything except trauma and removing bullets and fixing broken bones. Fire your MD now. Join us instead. Let us show you the real way of health recovery through science-based, clinically verified medical nutrition. Guess what? We found PJ, so we're talking to Australia at the very top of the next segment. Stick around. I'm Dr. Peter Glidden, and this is Fire Your MD Now.